that I didn't want to write about the afterlife. I wanted to be able to, oh, who-
So
good
funny to
things.
hear.
Oh wow, hello. Hi, Dad. Hi, I'm Jacqueline Bublitz, author of Before You Knew My Name and the new novel Leave the Girls Behind, which is out October 29th this year through Ellen and Unwin. I can't wait for you to read it. In 2021, I had a book come out through Ellen and Unwin, Before You Knew My Name. Came out at a tumultuous period in our history, both in Melbourne and New Zealand, where I was living at the time for family reasons. A book, Before You Knew My Name, which through lockdown and out the other side took on a life of its own, and has found readers across Australia in a way that still makes me really emotional to think about how this book has found her audience. I was nominated for and won the ARBIA General, so the Australian Book Industry Awards General Fiction Book of the Year in 2022, which is still to me something that's hard to comprehend, but it does say so on the sticker, so I have to believe it. And I was there on the night, and I do have the beautiful award, and it's won some crime fiction awards in New Zealand, which has been really lovely to be embraced there and to learn about the history of crime writing in New Zealand. So the Ngaio Marsh Awards, Best First Novel and Best Crime Novel. And then Sisters in Crime here, the group have been so supportive of my career. I don't want to get this wrong. The Reader's Choice and I think debut as well. I've been lucky enough to be shortlisted for awards, the Gold Dagger in the UK Crime Awards, with the only female on the list that year, and then in the United States, a couple of their crime genre awards too. So she's found an audience in that way, so which is always a surprise. Sometimes actually a surprise. I wake up, check my then Twitter when I was on Twitter, and think, oh, have been shortlisted for something, as opposed to, for example, the Arby's Sisters in Crime and Ngaio Marsh Awards, where there's a lot more fanfare, and it's genuinely exciting, and very, very validating and slightly terrifying sometimes too. It is a story about the connection that forms between a dead girl and the woman who finds her body. I should say dead girl, most respectfully. Um, it is ostensibly a crime novel. It's certainly been embraced by the crime community. It wasn't necessarily written as a crime novel. It was written as a coming of age story. It was written as a protest. It deals with aspects of gendered violence that I always say have been the thorn that I couldn't pick out of my side. Uh, and yet it's also a really hopeful book about death and how, to borrow from Fox Mulder from the X-Files, I believe that the dead are never truly lost to us. Yeah, so I wasn't, I know I mentioned this to you before, I wasn't writing this book with anybody waiting for it. When I started this book 7 years before it was published, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a publisher interested. I had an idea based on a crime that had happened in Melbourne on my street. A young woman was murdered, and Renee Lau, I'd like to mention her name respectfully, and her body was found by someone jogging the tan a few hours later. And because that was where I would run, not as often as I should, but when I did run, I would run the tan, but also walk up and down St Kilda Road where she was murdered at all hours in my 20s and 30s. I wanted to write a story that explored a side of that crime that I'd never considered. What does it do to the person who finds the body? And then out of that came Alice Lee, our narrator, our dead girl, who sort of took over from there, actually. And then, without being weird about it, kind of told me what to say. Well, to start, for readers who are familiar with Before You Knew My Name, it's a companion piece. It is not a sequel, but it is set 1 year after Alice Lee's death on the Upper West Side, a different cast of characters, but grappling with the same themes as were explored in Before You Knew My Name. We have an amateur detective, Ruthie, citizen detective. She's actually reformed. She's supposed to stay away from true crime when we meet her. But one particular night, she gets an Amber Alert. It's the American system of letting people know that a child has gone missing, and it happens to be from her old hometown in Connecticut, a couple of states over. And this triggers these poor characters, always triggered by something. This triggers memories of her best friend's murder. Beth, 19 years before, her best friend was murdered when she was 7 years old. And so Ruth, what can I say? Ruth has always had some questions about the murderer, Ethan Oswald. It's not a surprise who the murderer is. She's always had some questions. She's always been suspicious that he might have had other victims, but nobody has ever believed her. And the when this is long since dead, so this is not about whether or not he's perpetrated again. This is about her exploring the people orbiting around him at the time he committed his crimes. In particular, three women, one of whom may have been his partner in crime. I'm a Broadway baby. I wanted to be on Broadway. It's all I wanted when I was a small child. Alas, I do not have the talent. I did not have the talent to be Annie, but it's all I wanted to be. I saw the movie Annie when I was 5, and I also saw which was age appropriate, I think, but I also saw it inappropriately. Fame, the movie, and New York to me was this magical place where you just sang and danced in the streets, and I wanted to go. I was in love with it from 5 years old. I didn't get there properly until I was in my 20s. And I got there the week before 9/11. So I got to see a type of New York that changed very quickly. I was due to fly back into New York on September 12th. So I no longer have romantic notions of New York. I see it as a very, but I love her all the same. I think she's my city. And I wanted to write, when I wrote Before You Knew My Name, I wanted to write an international story. I didn't want to set it in Melbourne because I had been inspired, is a funny word, but I had the idea because of this local murder. I didn't want it to be nonfiction or to encroach on Renee's story in any way. And I wanted to live in New York City. And I had an opportunity, I think a once in a lifetime opportunity that I seized, somewhat foolishly at the time because it's an expensive city to live in. But I got to live there for roughly 6 months back in 2015, where Alice Lee and Ruby, the characters from Before You Knew My Name, came to life with me as we wandered the city. And now I see it like I'm Scorsese or something. I've got my New York trilogy. I have second book, Leave the Girls Behind You. It's set a year later in the same neighborhoods. Observant readers of both will notice some little Easter eggs that I've put in there about some of our characters. And then my third novel, will be rounding out that trilogy of New York stories. I'm not an academic in any way, shape, or form, to be honest, but certainly not when it comes to gender and to feminism and to power dynamics. It's all observation. It's all living in this world, in this body, as this kind of righteously angry person, but also this really hopeful person who loves people and loves and thinks that we can do better than we often do when it comes to personal dynamics between men and women in particular, but also on the political stage. And it never, unfortunately, I never run out of material. And I mean, I don't like that, but I just, you know, at any given time, what I've written about in the book, and maybe I'm editing, and then a news story breaks, just to validate that we still do need to be having conversations when there are so many other conversations we need to be having as well in this messy world. We still also need to be talking about equality and equity and what it's like to move in a woman's body in this world. I think I come from a place of wondering as opposed to trying to provide answers, and that's what is infused in the work. Don't know. I mean, I often get asked, "Well, what do you believe? Do you believe in the afterlife?" And I don't. I know what I hope for, but I don't know necessarily what I believe. I think they can be two different things. And I had years ago. I had read *The Lovely Bones* with Susie Salmon as our narrator, 14 years old, in the afterlife, and I had I loved that voice. I was also aware that I didn't want to write about the afterlife. I wanted to be able to, oh, good things. Oh wow, hello. Hi, Dad. Um, so when I had remembered, I'd heard or read, never have a like dead narrator; it'll kill your book. Yeah, it's one of those things like that people say with great authority, probably on book threads now or something like that. But wherever I'd read that. But Alice Lee, giving her a voice felt like the most natural thing. It was difficult though because I didn't want to move into. And with this book too, we do have um, what can I tell you? We have a chorus of dead girls that I didn't that come into the story and help and move the story along. I mean, it's difficult because you've still got to have parameters. You've got to have rules. Why can't they just tell you what happened to them? And what if you're going to have a narrator ostensibly can see everything godlike, like, well, yeah, why can't they just tell you? So that's been part of the challenge and the fun when you're dealing with death, is to work out, okay, well, in this universe, where the dead are not lost to us, but what are they to us? And I kind of, you come up with rules and then they start to make sense and you wonder if, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if I'm getting little messages from my dad, who passed away when I was editing Before You Knew My Name. And he's very, that the grief that I felt is very infused, must be my word of the day, infused into Before You Knew My Name. Whereas with Leave the Girls Behind, uh, I I still hope I make people cry. I think it's more about trauma than grief, although those two things can be, I mean, they're intrinsically entwined. Yeah, PTSD and show tunes. If you ever just need a soundbite from me, that's kind of what I'm doing with PTSD and show tunes. I write very quickly over a long period of time. So this book was written, took me the longest amount of time in a very short space of time to write. I write in short, sharp bursts, and then I have great periods of just long periods of just staring into space and wandering and trying to bring the characters in. So at the moment, these characters live in my head. So Ruthie, Beth, her best friend, and the cast of characters in Leave the Girls Behind. There's not a lot of room for my new my new girls, but they're coming. They're in the back of my head, and so I would say probably two. Let's say 2 years, and let's see if I can stick to that. I'm a compulsive editor, and I'm really lucky that I'm supported by an amazing team at Ellen and Unwin. But I'm at the point of seeing like a word on this page or seeing like I'm very pedantic now that I have the opportunity to be, and I've been wonderfully supported. But in terms of critically, no, nothing is going to change the story. This is she's nearly ready, but there's just some refinements, like, maybe like a painter looking. Oh, I've missed the like the corners or something. Dogs and spiders, yes. A fan of one, not so much of the other. Definitely. I've been an arachnophobe since I had been long before I do. So you understand why so many legs? Why do they have so many legs? I don't know. But also, I try to anthropomorphize spiders in order to get like to be comfortable with them because I don't want to kill them. It's not their fault, and I know they fulfill a really important duty, and I take it really seriously. So I like looking at pictures of spiders with like smiley faces and stuff, like when they thank you internet. But I also, when I was little, I couldn't hold a book if it had a spider on the cover. I couldn't. That's how ridiculously primal. It's just primal, right? So I try to forgive myself, but it does make, living in Australia, I will never go camping. It's not so bad when I'm in New Zealand, where I spend a lot of my time. But in Australia, you'll never get me camping, which annoys a lot of people. But in Sydney, I won't use restaurant toilets because they're always out the back. Terrifying. You understand. But so dogs feature in. There's a wrestler, RESSELER, as in the FBI agent wrestler. There's a dog, a bloodhound in here, and I couldn't imagine like writing a book without. We had it's Franklin, isn't it? And yes, He's named Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's where he came from in the first book, and then we've got Wrestler, and there'll be a dog in the next book as well. I think that when you are lonely, as so many of my characters are, there's no creature like a dog to, calm you down and to look after you and take care of you as you actively take care of them as well. So there'll always be dogs in my books, and have, I promise not to harm them unless I really have to. That's all I'll say. Unless I really have to, for the sake of the story. And if I do, I'll be really sorry about it, and I'll be, I apologize in advance for any animals hurt in the making of this book. Thank you so much. Thank you for asking such insightful questions.
When I was young